Welcome back to Cubs on the Mic. I'm your co-host Suvir, and today our guest is Christian Turingan.
Yeah, world-renowned climber.
Yep. All right. So, Christian, how many comps have you been to?
Uh, I'd say around five. Two of them were in a separate series, Pacific Climbing Series. That's a SoCal comp branch. Two of them have been under Touchstone. Those were just pretty fun, no high risks or anything involved. And then the other one, which I won, and that's probably the most serious comp I've been in, was under one summer send-off, where I was able to make finals and win the comp.
So you're a pretty solid climber then.
I mean, I have some spots that I'd like to improve on, but like compared to like most the level that USAC is in, which is USA Climbing, the governing body of comp climbing, um, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say I'm at that level, even though I'd like to compete there next year.
Would you say you're qualified to talk about advanced bouldering techniques though?
I mean, definitely. Like I'm at that level where I have to know like the advanced technique and training with the teams that are in USAC and compete in those comps as well. I'm basically gonna have to be at that level by like not even by the end of this year.
All right. Well, we're talking about advanced bouldering techniques today with our professional climber here, Christian. So, why don't we start off with, warming up, just, for people like advanced warm up techniques so that you can, we don't want to get injured here.
Warm up technique though, that's something I'm very serious about where I've had to refine like my warm up routine based on like both the injuries that I've experienced and also like what the team at my gym does and the team that I train with does. So basically, hangboarding is pretty essential, and a lot of people don't suggest that you do hangboarding until the first you've finished like a year of climbing, which I think that's pretty bad advice. I'd say like start once you've kind of figured out like, oh yeah, I need to increase my finger strength because obviously you're not really using your fingers day to day. So starting with like no hangs, which means your feet aren't really off the ground, like warming up with that. I usually do around 3 sets of no hangs on a beast maker of 20 to 20 millimeters. It depends on which beast maker there is, the 20 millimeter, or if it's the beast maker 2000 to 15 millimeter holds.
Well, it goes down to 8 millimeters too, right?
That's the moon hangboard.
Oh,
But if that's the one available, I like to use the 20 millimeter because it's not mostly about training your fingers to failure, but it's mostly about getting it warmed up and ready to actually crimp. And after the fingers as well, like I've experienced a hamstring injury myself, so I'm pretty serious about warming that up as well. So like leg swings and just stretching the hamstring and the leg muscles as well. Stretching the shoulders by like grabbing like a bar or like a brush or something and doing some shoulder rotations just to warm the shoulders up and prepare them for impacts like on dynos and everything like that. And just warming up every fingers. Like for what I do is one arm hangs where I squeeze so I can feel the muscle of my forearm be activated at the same time I'm crimping.
so you're doing one arm hangs on the hangboard or on the like on a pull-up bar or something?
On the hangboard. They're kind of like no hangs actually. Like I would say because your feet are still on the ground, but you're going through the motion of squeezing and releasing just to get the muscle warmed up.
So, when you're training your fingers, are you improving like, are there muscles in your finger that you're improving, or are you working on like pulley strength, like the pulleys in your fingers?
Well, there's not real muscle in your finger, but real pulley strength is actually connected to the muscles in your forearm. And by like that squeezing motion and the release motion, and by going through the action of crimping itself, you get your pulleys like ready for like impact, like when you go for a throw on a small crimp or when you have to pull on a small crimp, you're getting both your forearms ready for that, like muscularly and strength speaking. That's the kind of strength that we're gaining and both preparing your fingers for the impact because think of your pulley as like a rubber band where Like a weak rubber band is bound to break more easily, like with less tension.
Uh, but doesn't that also tie into tendon strength?
Tendon strength, pulley strength, pretty much interchangeable. Like in this context, like you just need to get them like warmed up and ready to like actually climb. Because if you climb cold, like you have a higher risk of
Uh-huh.
injury, and that's with any muscle or anything. But they are different from muscles. But I guess tendons and pulleys, like they're not too like different in terms of importance.
I mean, the only reason I bring that up is because people say that, and that's part of the reason why they say that you shouldn't do why you shouldn't be hangboarding, before your first year, just
Yeah.
because they say that your tendons take a lot longer to catch up to your strength, like your muscle build.
That is true. Like scientifically, like the tendons, the pulleys, like and like anything that's not a muscle, like a tissue, is takes longer to catch up to the muscles. That's why if you do steroids, like things such as your joints, which is you also have joints on your fingers and the other parts, the tissues and those parts, they they take longer to adapt to growth and to gain strength than your muscles do. So if you're making too much gains muscularly, you're leaving these structures at risk. That's why, like while you're on steroids, you can make a lot of gains muscularly, but your risk of injury skyrockets. So that's the risk of hangboarding when you're too early, is you make a lot of gains, like strength gains, but your risk of injury kind of kind of increases, but as long as you're not overdoing it. But there's more pros to it than there are cons.
Okay, I mean, I just started climbing, and um, I've managed to make my way up to V4, but I'm trying to project some V5s right now,
Yeah,
and so I was talking to Jacob Santos, and he was telling me that I have to be careful about grade, climbing up the grades, because
certainly.
he said that holds can start to like I can have a pulley tear or something. I mean, how do I prevent something like that while climbing up the grades quickly?
Well, well, here's the thing with chasing grades. Like you want to avoid grade chasing.
Uh-huh.
Like you don't want to go into a session thinking that, oh yeah, I want to climb this grade by this time, or I want to go in here and climb this many grades, or I want to, you want to like take like a session, and you want to just see what you can improve on each session rather than what grades you can chase, because that way you lead yourself to both mental burnout by like if you don't exceed your expectations, and B, like you're gonna get injured if you're trying moves that are way too hard for you
And
and you're trying to do that every session.
and this is true for beginners and advanced climbers.
This is true for everything. Like this is probably my biggest mistake when I started climbing. When I think it was the 5 to 6 or the 6 to 7. Especially 6 to 7. V7 is probably the most common place that people get injured. Like especially like the people I talk to in the gym. Yes, because V7 with the moves, they get real like much more technical, and the holds get much worse. So, like if you're going in there with insufficient technique, you're bound to get yourself injured because you're trying hard while both your body and your technique aren't really suited to be there yet.
Hmm.
So, I would say try and improve like each session rather than trying to chase something like in numerical value.
So, because this is more of an advanced episode, I mean, I'm sure some of these tips will be applicable to beginners as well.
Yeah,
But I mean, how would you recommend that? Like, let's say V5 and V6 isn't necessarily advanced.
intermediate, advanced.
Yeah, intermediate. So, I mean, but I mean, I'm kind of asking for myself as well.
Uh huh.
But at this point, how would somebody like me, who's in the 4 to 5 range, and then also we'll get to 6 to 7, 7 to 8, that kind of range.
Yeah.
How would you like supplement your training by not because I know some people will climb lower grades
Mm-hmm.
as well. I mean, what kind of techniques can you use besides just climbing besides climbing like your max grades to improve and help yourself improve?
Well, this is advice that I've gotten from a lot of other team kids as well, is low volume, high intensity, which means you're climbing your max and your limit bouldering, but you're not doing any more than like 5 attempts per se for each boulder, which
Mm.
both keeps your morale high. So like your mentality isn't like I'm failing on this, like I can't really do this, but rather like, oh yeah, I'm making moves on the hard problem and I'm actually improving. And B, like it actually helps you more, so you're not really fatigued and you're giving your max effort for each one of those moves on a hard boulder.
So you're not supposed to do more than like 5 or 6 attempts on one boulder, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I'd say that that's good for
Like in one session?
yeah, I'd say so in one session. Like you're not like burning yourself out on one problem as I would say.
Okay, I was just asking if the turn session is applicable for just one session. Like like, is it optimal to go back and keep trying in the next session? Like, is it in 5 every session? Is that kind of thing? Or
I mean, it is, but I would suggest moving on to a different problem to learn the movement of each. Because the problem here is like what I'm saying with like 5 attempts, like 5 really good attempts where you're pushing yourself to the physical and technical limit. That's just basically like you're not able to give any good attempts after that, and your mental state is bound to kind of suffer from that. Where you're saying, "Oh, my performance is dropping off," and it's gonna affect you a little bit mentally. So that's why I I like 5 attempts is the number that I choose.
okay. What else then about like climbing lower grades then?
Climbing lower grades, so like this is where you're gonna want to like when you're warming up, like you go through like at least like one of each grade. Like I spent 30 minutes like warming up on really easy problems, which is going up like slowly, like being really intentional about where you place your feet and where your body is, and just climbing them really technically and down climbing also. So like again, it's more reps on like body positioning because if you can up climb a problem and down climb a problem, like who's to say that you haven't mastered that grade? But obviously there's limitations to that as well.
And what grade? What's the highest grade you've climbed?
Highest grade I've climbed is probably 8.
8.
Yeah.
Okay, and how low do you start then when you start warming up?
Like probably like I could probably start at 0 and then I move up to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Like 5 I would say is the last grade I would consider a warm up.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
but also it depends on the gym because obviously if a gym is sandbagged or a gym is soft, then maybe those grades change. But it's really not about the grade; it's about the movement in a given problem.
And as an advanced climber, because you have so many more problems open to you that you don't necessarily have to see the grade to help dictate what you can do, do you find yourself not looking at the grade?
This is a really good point, and this is like why a lot of people want to advance in the first place. Well, like when you like as you get better, you have more like movement options available, but that also makes it so that you have more areas that you have to practice on and improve on to be a more well-rounded climber. So, like, yeah.
Okay. What are some other tips that you would give? Maybe just like random tips, something I haven't covered in order to when in order to supplement your training when you're starting out, trying to go higher to get to higher grades as well. Uh I mean, one thing I can think of is do you usually find yourself like, because I know grade chasing is like when
Mm.
do you find yourself staying at one grade and for like even though you know that you could probably try projecting like a V6, let's say, and you're climbing V5s, do you just keep climbing V5s until you can get there?
Yeah, definitely. I found myself in that situation. Like I've been at 8 for like a while now, and I know like I've ran a few strength tests. Like if you know anything about the Magnus Mid Bow Strength Challenge, where like my results say I could climb V11,
I mean,
which
could you tell me a little bit more about that?
so this is a challenge where you like you test your hangboard strength, your max hang challenge. I think it goes up to like 200% of your body weight on a 20 millimeter edge. You test your max pull up and then core strength with L sits or front levers and dead hangs. There's a 4. So I like you get points for which like ever thing you're able to complete, and you add that all up, and there's like a scale of like what grade like you're supposed to be climbing. I mean, I guess that's pretty accurate, but like I guess that's just like your max project grade if you kept trying at that level. But I don't find myself like ever since I hit V8 and ever since I started doing more serious comps, I never found myself projecting. Like I honestly followed that advice of like 5 hard attempts per boulder, like for both my mental state and for the sake of just getting better in general. Because if I try the same problem over and over again, and I'm facing both mental burnout and physical burnout from the same moves over and over again, that session is much less productive than like trying a variety of problems, getting like versed in like a bunch of different movement, also while having fun. And this applies for all grades.
Mhm. And then before we interrupted the with the whole Magnus Bippo test, you were talking about what? Sorry.
I think was it like like versing yourself in like different styles or whatever? What was
No, no, but we can go there. We can, yeah, why don't we start talking about okay, so let's talk about versing yourself with different styles
yeah.
and different because I know static and dynamic styles are two ones that I know of. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about the different kind of styles that you use for bouldering and what people usually stick to, what can limit you in higher grades?
So like as you move on, like the amount of styles like can completely change, and like the people's opinions about like whether you should be training in all styles kind of differs. Like some of the best climbers in the world, like either outdoor or comp, like they could be terrible at like the other style. Like take Will Bosey for an example, V17 climber. I think he has the most V17 ascents. Cannot is really not the best at comp climbing, and vice versa. The best people in comp climbing may not be able to perform well outdoors just because it's a different style. But indoors, take like for example, like USAC sets. Their style is much more different from like the commercial setting, because commercial setting is usually more physical and just like they're generally set like safer, accessible problems like even at higher grades. While like comp problems, those tend to like they want to test your ability to be able to like solve a problem and like your physical strength. But obviously, it's like a balance between the two, and it goes beyond like static and dynamic as well. So,
Well, hold on. How does it go beyond static and dynamic?
basically, like commercial sets, like they could just be like static or dynamic, but like with comp sets, like they they test like your certain ability, like say like your ability to hold tension and like your ability to use proper body positioning, like especially on on slab. Slab is much more prominent in comp climbing than overhang per se, like or cave climbing, and those are the types of things that are like more like available like outdoors or like in commercial gyms. But in my comp experience, like slight overhangs, which test your ability to hold on to like big holds, but you have to like know which part of the big holds to like hold on to, and how you want to position your body to get to the next position. Or like crazy dynos that are like more pleasurable for the viewer than it is like technically for the climber. But you still have to know how to execute these moves and not, you know.
So a lot of advanced climbers that want to start doing competitions, what can they expect between their regular everyday gym, how they set, and how a competition sets their climbs?
So this is actually like pretty hard to like say, because I myself am not a setter. But the thing is like comp simulations, like usually sometimes what just dictates a set is like the pressure that is put onto you. Like sometimes like there's comps with like formats where you only have 4 minutes to send the boulder. Like you're just put in there in the moment that you have to read the problem, send within 4 minutes. Like that's the amount of pressure that's put onto you. And that's what you have to train for. Like it doesn't matter if the boulder is like a commercial boulder or a boulder set like for comp. Like you can do that for like any grade and you'll get better like in your mentality of being a comp climber.
Well, for that one where you have 4 minutes, do they give you unlimited attempts?
Yeah, you get unlimited attempts, but usually, like for like most of the comps that I've been to, and for USAC and international ruling, I think it's like point 0.1 like per attempt. Then you get full points for a flash. So
Oh, okay. Okay. Um, do you find maybe why don't we talk about the specific types of holds on comp climbs as opposed to everyday climbs in your gym? Are they more crimpy? Are they more juggy? What can we expect? I know every setter is different, every competition is different, but what have you noticed that maybe a recurring pattern?
So here's the thing, right? So for like take like commercial setting is like a practice run, right? Like a whole you can say like an entire climb is a crimp ladder or a sloper ladder or like a dynamic climb. Like you can categorize it by that. But for comp climbs, like there's gonna be like those holds are just there to test your ability to move. So that's why you need to know movement so well, because it's not really about the hold types. Like you need to know obviously how the hold types work and how to position your body, but it's mostly about figuring out like what they want you to do, like just the beta, because betas and comp climbs are so much more complex, I feel like. So it's not really about like hold type and what they're like what they are for like their size and anything, but it's about the beta that you have to figure out.
Hmm. So we've talked enough about indoor climbing. Do you
Yeah.
feel like most advanced climbers are ready for outdoor climbing?
Depends as well because they're both completely different styles. Like obviously you put a purely indoor climber outdoor, there's gonna be like there's gonna be a learning curve just because like you don't have the colored holds, right?
Mhm.
So like you don't know where the holds are, like how to move because you don't see like colored footholds either. So it's harder to read beta, I feel like. And for like outdoor like route climbing as well, like that's also a completely different story from indoor like rope climbing as well.
I mean, but isn't there chalk on the holds for outdoor climbing? Like, isn't it marked with chalk kind of?
I mean, kind of, but obviously they can get washed out. Or if you're trying to go for a first descent, you're not gonna have that. You're gonna have to like
Yeah.
just go by like where like the formations of the rock and everything like that.
Hmm. And so Jacob last time was talking about different kinds of like different rock types.
Yeah.
And I think he was saying sandstone is the best and granite is the worst to climb on because of sharpness. And what do you have to say about that?
So personally, like I've climbed in both Joshua Tree, Stony Point. Those are two crags in California. Like obviously Joshua Tree is closer to like Palm Springs, and most of those holds are granite, which like the rocks are pretty chunky and they hurt to hold. And I think Tramway also in Palm Springs is also like that, where you really don't have that many attempts just because of how like beat up your skin is gonna get between those attempts. But with sandstone, what I like a lot about that is the holes feel really similar to like the plastic holes in the gym. But the problem is like they're pretty chossy sometimes, especially like in the more populated crag.
Chaucy?
Yeah, where like they're like more there's like more debris on them or like they're more like oily and slippery. Like they're bound to get more like that.
Have you ever seen people climbing barefoot outdoors?
Jacob climbs barefoot outdoors sometimes.
D- have you ever, does that hurt like on granite?
I wouldn't climb outdoors barefoot. I know some people like doing it. I don't know what's wrong with them. Like
Is that how the holes get all greasy too?
no, it's mostly just hand sweat. That's
Oh.
why. That's
Mhm.
why I like bringing out like fans and because I personally have a sweat problem with my hands. Like I'm using mag dust and my hands are still sweating hard. So like
Yeah. So I feel like that kind of rule where you say that when you're climbing granite and stuff, your hands can get pretty tired pretty quickly. So,
not tired, but your skin is gonna get
oh,
really
sorry,
yeah
yeah.
yeah.
And so that kind of has to do with thinking about climbing before you climb. I think we can also tie that back into indoor climbing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that actually like when outdoor problems are graded, like I guess some people can consider like, oh yeah, there's this type of rock. Like right now there's a discussion going on with a V17 in Nevada, which is Return of the Sleepwalker, where some people are saying that, oh yeah, since it's sandstone, the holds are actually getting like bigger and better because like the more people climb on it, the easier it is to like make the holds more like I guess the word is ergonomical, like to fit someone's hands in there
Uh-huh.
just because like the nature of sandstone that it erodes faster than like say like limestone or granite, and also that limes or that sandstone is more favorable to the hands than most other rock
So,
types.
so
But
are climbs disappearing then outdoors like was rocket roads?
so yeah, so here's my like the problem like with my crag since it's all like a lot of sandstone and it's a pretty populated crag. A lot of the holds like break off over time, which can make the climb harder, or easier, but rarely easier. But it is, I guess, a safety hazard. It's also like if there's loose rock and everything
Yeah, and
like
you could
that.
fall.
He could fall, and maybe if the loose rock is still a little bit in there, the next person climbing up is not gonna have a fun time.
Yeah. When you're falling, like, do you have a crash pad? Do you? Because I know some people don't even climb with a crash pad.
I might be one of those people occasionally, but you know, um, I'm not too well versed on the topic of free soloing, but like some people say that like the more aware you are, like the more like amount of danger that you feel like in that moment, like the less the risk is rather than when you're not really paying attention, like you're just in the moment.
So you're
Like
saying the fear of injury increases your focus?
yeah, I would say like in those highball boulders, like even though there's a crash pad there, I still feel like if I fall off, I'm definitely gonna break something, and that
Mhm.
probably increases my performance because it activates the fight or flight mode. But it, I don't know, it's not a great feeling, I would say.
I've never climbed outdoors, but I usually see those pads and they're pretty small, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the longest fall I've taken was about 12 feet, but that was like I know I was gonna fall. Like I feel like it would be a really bad fall, like if you fell like 12 feet because like a hold broke off or you
Or
dry fire. So like, yeah, that's pretty nasty fall to take, I would feel like.
Mhm. And I mean, why don't we talk a little bit more about injury prevention? How many injuries have you gotten while climbing?
I have two synovitis injuries right now. I've
What's
taken.
synovitis?
So like this is when like the your inside of your joints, like the fluid is like kind of like leaking out and you're getting like kind of inflamed. Like the synovial fluid isn't going in there properly. So like your finger, maybe your range of motion is impacted and it just gets inflamed every time you like crimp or put pressure on it. So what I've done to manage this is like again warming up properly, because I think the main reason I like got these injuries from was like the high volume when I was like grade chasing and all that, because I got them like when I was climbing like 5'6".
Oh,
So even before I started doing comps. So like that's like another reason why low volume really intentional attempts is much better than like doing a lot of hard things for you in such a like short amount of time.
well, how long did it take you to get to 5'6"?
Within my first like 2, 3 weeks, I was at
Okay.
V5. Going to 6, it took maybe like another month, I would say.
Okay, so about like
But
two
it
months.
is it is really different for people, like depending on like your strength level when you start in, or like how like fast you can develop technique. But it just really depends on like your background and everything.
Because you did calisthenics before, right?
Calisthenics lifting, I was doing power, like it was powerlifting I was in like before that, and I got an injury from that as
Mm.
well. So
So
that
you're
was,
injury prone.
yeah, yeah.
So, mm, we usually cut out the silence, by the way.
Really?
So he's probably gonna cut this out because I also said that. Uh, it's so quiet now. Let me think.
Want to talk about like comp format or like I don't know.
Calm format, dude. We've been flying around so much
We can
between
go from
topics,
outdoor to
indoor to outdoor to indoor. Uh, okay, back on. So, what about your post climb? Cool down. Like I've heard hangboarding is especially terrible when you're like cooling down.
yeah. I wouldn't put any like external load after your fingers are already fried. It's like hitting a workout like and then hitting cardio after that, so you're already all fried, and then you decide, oh yeah, maybe I'll just go lift again
Uh-huh.
to just for the extra gains. That's kind of what it's like. But for me, like I like to campus if I have any more extra energy left. Maybe like do like technical problems like slab or like whatever is like not tired is what I'll hit by the end. And that's like a really hard session. That's a high volume session, I would say.
Because I've had sessions where I was tired on my main grades, like the ones I'm really projecting, and then my fingers were super tired, so I let them rest a little bit, and
Yeah.
then I just started doing every like VB and V1 or V2 in the gym. Is that is that a good thing, or does that increase the chances of injury?
I just think it's unnecessary load just because like you warmed up already on those same problems. And then
Yeah.
I mean if you're injured and you can't really climb, like obviously like you do the max grade that you can, and then after that you go back to the easier problems and just do those again if you still just really want to climb.
Yeah.
But like I I wouldn't, that's not something I'd recommend.
Mhm.
Just personal preference.
I feel like the main point that we've talked about here is how strength doesn't necessarily equate to grades as well, because
Ye-
you need a lot of technique. I mean, what are some like really specific techniques that you can use?
technique like right here is just mainly about tension. Like that's what separates like grades from like 8 to 12 is like the amount of like pressure like you can put on your feet and like staying on the wall like after hard moves on the hard overhang. Slab, they really have not set any slab over V6, but it's also really about like body positioning, like ability to generate momentum if it's a hard dyno. And that's all like body positioning and being able to keep yourself close to the wall even after a hard dyno.
What about like round footholds? That's one thing I've seen people struggle with a lot.
Round footholds.
Like they're really slippery, small, smooth footholds.
I would categorize that into like dual techs. Like any dual techs is pretty hard. Like
What are dual techs?
those like little plastic, like just up straight plastic holes, no texture or
Yeah.
anything. That's something that's really like prevalent in comp style, just because they want you to like. The technique is that like you don't want to pull like downwards. Like imagine like an angle, right? If you go downwards, you're obviously gonna slip off. But if you attack that angle from the same angle, you're gonna stay on it. And if you apply pressure through that angle, you're gonna stay on. But like obviously, like that in theory, that maybe there's gonna be like dual text routes present on like these like 3 to 4, where that's gonna be pretty easy to apply. But in comp style, you're gonna have to use the dual text, like I guess to your advantage, even though you really want to try hard to avoid them, is because you're already in the position where if you slip from that, it's all over. So it's just the more like they make mistakes more unforgiving, I guess, at higher levels.
Mm. I mean, so you're saying there are also a lot of like handholds with duplex,
Dual text,
dual tech,
yeah.
sorry.
The handholds just make it like more difficult to grip on, because obviously if you're using chalk, you want your hands to be dry. So it's basically like holding on to nothing. And that makes it so you're more reliant on your body positioning, because even if the holes are big per
Mm.
se, you're not really getting anything out of them just because you have nothing to grip.
So you
So
like, I mean, but you could still technically grab a smooth hold.
you could, but they're not you're not really getting anything out of them. If the setter is like set with them really good, you're not gonna get anything out of them. They're just there as like placeholders, and your body positioning is the one carrying you through the problem.
Oh, so just kind of use them to like to bump onto the next hold kind of thing, or
I mean, like they're gonna be there, but you can't like I would say you can't like canvas off them or like
Mhm.
generate like a really good like dynamic like go for a really good dynamic move off them. Like they make it like more they make your beta more intentional, because you get up there, you can't really make any mistakes. There's less margin of error than if it were a big hold.
Okay. And just to to go back all the way earlier in our conversation, at the start we were talking about, sorry, I'm flying around a lot, but to tie it back into going from like medium or intermediate grades to higher grades,
Yeah.
there's like, because I find myself usually what I'll do is I'm climbing and then I try to bring my feet up to my hands, kind of like closer to my hands, and then just swing up under the next hold. And then just like kind of like keep swinging, like coming in close, coming like really getting in small, and then like releasing and going up. Like, is that dynamic? Is that what you'd call dynamic?
Dynamic is like going to the next hold where like if you miss, you'd probably fall. It's like a dead point, which is like if you go for like a controlled throw off a hold, but if you miss, you'll probably fall.
Uh-huh.
And like obviously like dynos where like you just have to jump off the hold you're on. That would be considered dynamic. Like dynamic and powerful, they all fall into like the same category as dynamic. But I think what you're saying is kind of could be considered dynamic, but if I'm picturing it right, like you're putting your foot to your hand, is what
Yeah, like I get it as close as possible using footholds.
and then you just like you jump off from that,
Well,
both hands off the holds.
I mean usually yeah, kind of like that. I mean sometimes I'll like keep one hand on and kind of like swing a little forward, like edge up, but I usually just try to kind of create a pendulum because then my hips are so far away from the wall and my like
Yeah,
and
so
I'm
let's
like
do less of that actually.
yeah.
So I think your time would be like much like more well spent, like just going through those easy problems with the technical way.
Uh
So
and so how does certain would techniques like that because they've kind of worked for a lot of my problems like 3 to 4 they're working pretty well, but then how do they start would that start falling apart around the 7 range?
yeah, because that's then again like problems are less about like pure strength, because obviously you have your foot next to your hand and you're generating most of that is through upper body strength. Well, like it's really not gonna work for like most of the harder problems just because they're more like focused on like, or can you position your body right to reach this type of hold? Because maybe that next hold is gonna be completely terrible if you go for it dynamically. So they want to force you to find a solution where your body positioning is doing all of the work.
I mean, I sometimes also like kind of put my foot up on a higher hold and just like pistol squat up.
I mean, if you want to be a slam climber, like, I mean, like, I don't find an issue with that. But obviously, there's better ways to train because if you want to train for something specific, you do more of that movement. But I don't really see how, I don't really see how this is gonna apply to like if you were gonna do the problem normally. You
Uh-huh.
know, there's this training like technique going around lately that I don't really understand myself where people try and get their foot on the hold before they get their hands to it, and it says
Oh, what?
they say they like it improves their endurance or whatever. I think that is BS myself. But
I think that's okay. Let's cut that and say I think that's total like garbage. Just say because it's a school podcast.
oh, that is true.
You know, you're like yes. Okay,
Mm,
I think that's total like garbage or whatever you want to say.
well, there's better ways to do that, right?
Yeah.
There's better ways to train like body positioning and everything like that, but like just it just creates unnecessary fatigue, and since a lot of people do it for warming up as well, like it just it just makes it so you climb worse during your session, and it doesn't really help with anything because when are you gonna touch your foot with your like when are you
I
gonna
have. Look, there was this one V4 at Cliffs of It, and it was like kind of a running start. You jump on to this like a one hold, and then whatever. I brought my kind of like my foot up and put my whole heel on the hold while my hand was still on there, and then like it was a bit awkward, but then I just kind of like moved up.
I can't picture that, bro. I don't know. I can't picture that what you're saying.
Okay. All right. Well, let to close out. Do you have any last like tips that something I haven't brought up or something we haven't discussed here, something that you would give to comp climbers that you've or just advanced climbers that you've experienced in all your time climbing, something that you think isn't really discussed or isn't really told well.
Well, this goes for like all sports, but I'd like to actually have a project, like make a YouTube project on this myself. But climbing, like especially like in higher levels of comp and as you progress through, it's more about like the mental side rather than the physical side. Like when you start plateauing at around like 7 and the 8, 9 plateau is pretty bad as well. Like you just need to find yourself, like ways to keep yourself motivated, I guess. And like you're not gonna progress as fast as you used to. Like you enjoy like 3, 4, 5, 6. Like those are areas where like you can see your progression every session. But like at this level, like it's gonna be really slow and you have to be intentional about your training to see results. And for a lot of people that can be like pretty demotivating for them as well. So like myself, like I've like my progression has slowed down a bit, and I'm just trying to make every session like a slight improvements. Like I get further on the problem, or like I get